Greetings, travelers, and welcome to DracoBreach Reviews E3 2019. I know I skipped last year, but I ended up with a very long review which I couldn't properly condense from my bandwidth. I apologize about that, but I'll try a different format this year, covering what interested me while generalizing the conferences. This year we had two surprises, kind of outside E3. First, Sony decided to forego any conference. Considering how horrid their offering was last year and controversy surrounding their new publishing rules, this decision may have been for the best. Second, Google introduced their new console, using the term loosely, the Stadia, shortly before the official start of the Electronic Entertainment Expo. In short, the Stadia and its gaming model look bad. I kind of wish that was the worst of E3 had to offer, but several companies asked Google to hold their soda pop. Before I continue, I shall briefly mention the PC conference. It left no impression on me. I guess that means it wasn't awful? Regardless, we have 6 conferences to go over, no matter how brief. Let's start off with EA. I really have no other way to describe it than terrifyingly awful. But thankfully, I didn't catch it, or most conferences, honestly, live. I was able to skim through the 3-hour 6-game conference. Admittedly, they started off with something I am interested in, Jedi Fallen Order. It looks good, but I'm constantly worried about EA's business model. The remaining 5 games didn't interest me, but I'm sure somebody liked at least some of them. Overall, EA simply doubled down on their anti-consumer business model of releasing incomplete games and selling remaining content piecemeal as either DLC or whatever they are renaming loot crates. The audience was obviously paid to cheer their awkward announcements and annoying hype man. The conference was not worth watching and, sadly, almost a preview of things to come. Flat F for EA. From here, I'll cover Ubisoft and Bethesda in one go. They were both bad, but I'll give Ubisoft the edge just barely for actually talking about new games and showing gameplay for a few titles. I only remember 2 games that I felt had good presentations, one from each company. Ubisoft made an excellent showing of Watch Dogs Legion, and Bethesda genuinely blew the audience away with Doom Eternal. Otherwise, both companies wasted a ton of time on useless garbage. Ubisoft actually showcased a movie and an Apple TV exclusive television series. Meanwhile, Bethesda showed off a lot of DLC, mobile games, and updates for years-old games. They both embarrassed themselves with stage stunts and pre-recorded footage. Bethesda took the cake with a hot mic issue, which I actually managed to skim over. The audiences were as bad or worse at these events, so I was happy to skip content. In the end, I think Ubisoft walked away with a solid D, and Bethesda walked out with an embarrassing D-. Moving on to Microsoft, I really don't know what to say. It was okay, and I was able to watch through it without wishing I could skim over the fat. The audience wasn't quite as annoying, and once again, they failed to sell me on the Xbox One. They literally announced 3 games I'm going to get for PS4. Tales of Arise, Dragon Ball Z Kakarot, and Psychonauts 2. They also announced Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines 2, and I'm honestly undecided on it. If I do, PS4 or Steam/GOG. I really think the Microsoft conference was held back by a lack of gameplay trailers. They relied far too heavily on CGI trailers that did not convey anything of value to gamers. They looked good, and many of them did have great showmanship. However, it's just not the meat I like to dig into. I'd give Microsoft the absolute average C for being not bad, but not exactly good either. Before moving on, I have to point out my favorite announcement up to this point, Tales of Arise. I love the Tales franchise, and I've played every mainline entry. While there are 2 genuinely bad games, Legendia and Knight of Ratatosk, the series has proven to be fairly consistent and extremely replayable. My only real disappointment is that Bandai Namco promised the next mainline entry would be on Switch, and Tales of Arise quite obviously is not. I am absolutely getting the game for PS4, maybe Steam at a later date. I'm sure I'll enjoy it, but I really wanted the option to play on my TV and on the go. Just thought I'd throw that out there. You can imagine how underwhelmed I felt going into the Square Enix conference, and my expectations were set extremely low by this point. While there were certainly upcoming releases I wanted to hear more about, I wasn't sure what they'd actually show. Then, they started with Final Fantasy VII Remake. Going into the conference, I wasn't sold on the idea of remaking Final Fantasy VII as a multi-release episodic game. I thought it was a bad decision. Now to be clear, Final Fantasy VII for me, personally, ranks in about the middle of the mainline titles. Also to be clear, that does not mean I think it's a bad game. I just personally prefer 4, 5, 6, 9, and 12, not in that order. And I still consider my least favorite game in the Final Fantasy franchise to be a good game. I hope this illuminates why I wasn't excited for 7 as an episodic release. I hope it also illuminates how very strongly Square Enix had to work to succeed on selling me on the idea. Because I'm sold. It looks like a fantastic reimagining, and I like how the battle system looks. I also like some of the redesigns. I'm sold enough that I hope other titles get this treatment. While I love the look of the SNES titles, I'm not opposed to a lovingly crafted remake, as 7 Remake certainly appears to be. Other highlights include Dragon Quest Builders 2 and Dragon Quest XI-S Echoes of an Elusive Age Definitive Edition. Wow, that's a mouthful. I'm excited to pick these up for the Switch, especially the latter. I enjoyed Dragon Quest XI on PS4, and I'm interested in the expanded story and ability to travel to past Dragon Quest games. I also find it fascinating that they let Nintendo reveal the release date in their E3 Direct. Nothing else really grabbed me, but I still enjoyed Square Enix's conference. It was a step up from everything prior, and they actually showed quite a lot of gameplay for games that mattered. Sure, the Kingdom Hearts 3 DLC announcement was weird, and the Avengers portion was pretty garbage. However, I think a B- is rather fair here. I liked it, which is saying something for E3 2019 up to this point. I went to bed and woke up early to catch the Nintendo E3 Direct live. I waited on the countdown with some trepidation. E3 hadn't been good so far. The Pokemon Direct a week prior was decent. A good overview of a game I'm looking forward to. However, E3 was a different beast, and Nintendo didn't have Pokemon to fall back on. Oh, how unfounded my worries were. There were low points during the Direct, but the heights it reached and the following Treehouse Live simply made my general euphoria nearly drown out any disappointment. To reiterate on Pokemon, there was a small section dedicated to it in the Direct. It introduced the Water Gym and its leader, Nessa, as a prelude to their showroom demo area. And it literally stopped there. Treehouse showed off the wild area, and I'm really loving this idea. However, it wasn't just Pokemon, of course. The Direct and Treehouse also showed off, in no particular order, Luigi's Mansion 3, Legend of Zelda Link's Awakening, Fire Emblem 3 Houses, Diamond X Machina, Astral Chain, Dragon Quest XI, Animal Crossing New Horizons, Mario Maker 2, and Hollow Knight Silksong. I really hope I'm not missing anything because I'm interested in all these games. Link's Awakening looks adorable, and it'll receive both a Collector's Edition and Amiibo. Yes, I have both pre-ordered. I love the original, though I didn't play it until the DX version released on the Game Boy Color. I'm looking forward to it, and I really like the minor changes that remain in line with the original intent. Plus, the Dungeon Builder just added that extra cherry on top. Luigi's Mansion 3 proves that Nintendo generally shows how they improve a game as it develops. The first showcase looked really rough, but the new gameplay looks so much better with improved effects and textures. The return of Portrait or Character Ghost is a welcome sight, and the new moves to Luigi's arsenal likely will add strategy and a unique twist. Also, the new Poltergust is named Goo, and that is just hilarious. I was a little sad to see Animal Crossing pushed back to March 2020, but I'm all for taking time to improve the game and ensure happy and healthy employees. It helps that the idea of building a town from the ground up on a deserted island just intrigues and fascinates me so much. Needless to say, I'm waiting and watching. I won't go over the other games I mentioned right now beyond this. I like what I've seen so far, and I look forward to more in the future. Except Mario Maker 2, which will be out by the time I publish this video. The Direct also announced No More Heroes 3, Ni no Kuni, Panzer Dragoon, and new Lucky's Tale. I'm excited to see what Platinum Games has in store for us in Travis Touchdown's third mainline outing, so I look forward to more news. I love Ni no Kuni on PS3, and I think I'll concentrate more on the Monster catalog once I get it for Switch. I'm getting Panzer Dragoon, full stop. As for Lucky's Tale, I'm undecided. It does look interesting, but it also looks like a pretty basic platformer. During Treehouse Live, I only really remember one new announcement. Sakura of Rice and Ruin looks really good, and I think it's already out on PS4 and PC, but I'm going to pick it up on Switch. You may notice some distinct absences from my thoughts on the Nintendo E3 Direct. Don't worry, I'll get to those. First, however, I want to go over some other E3 2019 announcements that weren't at conferences. Grandia HD Collection has made vast improvements, and I'm highly anticipating it on Switch. I'm looking into the Saga retro releases on Switch as well. Disgaea 4 Complete for Switch made me a little giddy. A little. With all that out of the way, the last few announcements to come out of the Nintendo E3 Direct, and they were all showstoppers for me. As a point of reference, Tales of Arise and Final Fantasy VII Remake do come close, and they may even tie one or two of these announcements. I'm a huge fan of both Dragon Quest and Banjo-Kazooie, so you can imagine my excitement that representatives from both franchises made it into Smash. I love the model for Banjo-Kazooie, primarily because it uses the much better Nintendo 64 design. As far as the hero, the only change I'd have personally made is the hero from 5 instead of 4, but that's personal preference. Collection of Mana. I held my breath when I saw the splash screen for the announcement. They'd just announced a remake of the third game, now titled Trials of Mana. I thought that was enough. A full 3D remake with both Japanese and English voice cast, and it looks amazing so far. Then they just added to that with the collection of the original games as is. Final Fantasy Adventure, Secret of Mana, and Trials of Mana. Then it stealth dropped. Then Square Enix announced a limited physical release. You can bet your bottom dollar I pre-ordered the physical edition. I've waited this long for Collection of Mana, for an official release of Trials of Mana. I'm absolutely willing to wait for the physical cartridge. If this had been all, I would have been absolutely elated. Blown away. Nintendo, nice and solid A. Then it happened. There was just one more thing they wanted to share. I heard her heartbeat and saw a glowing green arm holding a figure down. My mind raced as I tried to figure out what franchise this was. It wasn't third party, I knew that right away. No, Nintendo wasn't going to tease a third-party game this hard as a one more thing at the end of their E3 Direct. I also knew it couldn't be Metroid Prime 4, and it's just too early in development. Redevelopment with Retro Studios at the helm. Only a few options made sense to me, but what made the most sense? It was too early for a new Zelda title, and it looked more fantasy-focused than the usual sci-fi fantasy of Monolith Soft. Then the music, then the wall paintings, then Princess Zelda riding a pack animal. Then I simply stared in stunned silence as a dark, thrilling trailer played out before me. The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild is getting a sequel. While it had its flaws, specifically with the story, it was still one of my favorite Legend of Zelda titles, and The Legend of Zelda is my favorite franchise, period. Nintendo shattered my expectations. They blew me away. They left me flabbergasted and begging for more. I was excited to see interviews. When I heard that Breath of the Wild sequel is being developed to be darker, like Majora's Mask, I felt like I was on Cloud 9. When I heard that the sequel started as Wave 3 DLC, but the Breath of the Wild team decided there were just too many ideas, it piqued my interest. What I wouldn't give to be a fly on the wall as the team discussed their options. Of course, as time went on, the trailer was broken down and dissected. The green, sprawling text turned out to be primarily Gerudo, though sprinklings of Hylian and other language were discovered. It also appears to say Seal Ganon, which makes sense considering the hand in the trailer seems to be holding Ganon back, attempting to seal him. Needless to say, I'm extremely excited. not just about the sequel to The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, but for a lot of titles as well. While E3 2019 was nothing noteworthy outside of Nintendo, there were still plenty of titles to look forward to. In fact, if I didn't mention something in this review that you are interested in or want to hear my opinion on, comment down below. I'm excited to discuss pretty much any game, even if it's not one that personally interests me. Sometimes I just enjoy the showmanship companies put towards their big titles. Regardless, for the time being, this will be DracoBreach reporting out. God bless and safe travels. And in the meantime, please remember to like, comment, and subscribe.